Hey everybody, welcome back to my videos. My name is Eric McGrew, and today I am coming to you about this tree that's, well, right there behind me again. The reason I'm coming to you is because somebody on YouTube asked me, well, how do you fix it? Because I talked about how this was a canopy reduction that was done poorly, and I told you what was done wrong with it. So check out my other video via the card at the top of this video to check that out. Now, what to do to fix this? Well, in this case, all those dead nubs need to be brought back to a collar of live branches that will have the enzymes in it that are required to create wound wood. Okay, now remember, a tree never heals itself, it heals over. Any decay that has started in the tree before wound wood starts to grow or fully completely grows is always going to be there, and it will continue to some degree to expand as time goes on, depending on factors of environment. If oxygen and air, if oxygen and outside water and sunlight are getting to it somehow, and remember, trees breathe and absorb moisture and things through the bark layer and then through the cambium and then down into the vasculars and everything. You have oftentimes, even once wound wood has occurred and it started to compartmentalize, it may continue to creep slightly over the years. If it never has wound wood heal over, like for instance, if one of these big stubs of dead just stays there and it eventually falls off because it rots, then it's less likely wound wood will ever fully cover over. It'll just cover over the edges of the sapwood, and then you have a hollow cavity, and then the decay is going to continue to occur even faster and longer over periods of time, and it could eventually creep way down into the stem and even potentially make a whole side of the tree hollow. So cutting off those nubs to a union where there are healthy collars, and those collars, the healthy branch collars, have the enzymes close enough that they can promote that wound wood healing or growing, that's going to be key in a lot of the factors for the major decay in this tree. Another thing to consider is that with all these random water sprouts or epicormic growth just popping up everywhere on this tree, now what you're going to have is you're going to have a situation where you have encouraged accidentally this crossing branch growth. That needs to be removed where major branches are crossing, and major branches in this occasion would be all of that secondary epicormic growth that shot up, looking for areas where branch tissue is rubbing on others or is going to within the near future. It takes a little bit of forethought. You have to look at where the growth pattern is, and if they're already touching clearly, that's going to be an issue. If they're going to grow into it within the next year or two, that's an issue. But it's always a balance as well. You don't want to take everything out, because if you take everything out, then you could cut too much of the canopy out, and then it'll send the tree into a second shock, which would be even worse for this tree at this time. So with it is, even though it's thicker than normal, it shouldn't have been this thick to begin with all this epicormic growth, but it occurred because of bad canopy reduction. You still don't want to take over 25% of the canopy out. In this case, depending on the situation, but according to ISA and according to typical standards, 25% is the maximum. Here's the thing though, a lot of the ISA standards, while I don't disagree with them and I try to follow them, they're rules, and rules don't apply in every situation in life. A lot of times you have to go by principles, and a principle is not taking too much out for the health of the tree. Well, what's too much? That's relative. If you have a tree that's barely hanging on and it only has 10 branches of growth with live buds and leaves on it, taking 25% of the green out of that tree is a huge amount. So that's not even suggested. So go by principles of what would be too much for the tree or too little. 30 is the max I would suggest. 25 is what everybody else recommends, and try to stick as close as you can to that. So once you've thinned that, and don't forget, that's not just taking out big branches. So in this case, there's so much going straight up. I would take out a lot of the large growing upper ones to make space for other ones growing in, but never forget the importance of tip pruning. So try to get out there with a pole saw. In this case, I might use a extension pole lopper or something. Try to get as close to that collar as you can and make clean cuts. And try to use pole saws on anything that's like 1/2 inch or bigger, maybe 5/8 of an inch or bigger, so that you don't get what they call the eggshell effect, where it squeezes it and it separates the cambium layer from the sapwood. And get that thinned out with not only the vertical stems that are larger, but also thinning out those tips. This will do two things. One, it'll help prevent that crossing growth to a larger degree. It'll allow branches to leaf out more, stimulate those buds, and continue to produce the canopy in a fuller and more effective way without as much dead in the future. And secondly, it'll also create a more natural canopy, which allows wind and sunlight to come and penetrate the canopy, getting into the inner layers of the tree. A lot of people want to strip out everything on the inside of the tree. Don't do that. That's not a good method. It's stripping out all that epicormic growth on the inner side of the branches is not an ideal situation either, so don't do that. As a general rule, once again, some things I've read say that like the smaller epicormic growth from the trunk to a main fork in a branch, you don't want more than maybe 10. And I try to select those carefully so that they either fill the canopy area where light can get to them easily and it adds to the structure of the tree, or they are not going to be ones that grow straight up into a branch below them or something like that, that will just die and come out. Now, a lot of the interior growth will die as the canopy comes, but remember, a lot of this lower stuff is what's going to produce leaves and things early in the season, and it's going to be feeding those nutrients lower to the trunk as it's waking up the tree, and then they will die out in the summer because the canopy will come up and then they'll lose sunlight and not be able to produce and they'll die, which is fine. That's how that epicormic growth on the inside typically works. If they survive, they'll become structurally larger, and then you'll work with them as time goes on, hopefully, if you have a good client, so that you can maintain their structure. They're not rubbing or crushing into other branches where it's choking off the cambium layer of itself or others. So it's always a balance of what to do. It takes just practice and judgment. But yeah, I would take out a good portion of the vertical ones, the whole stem, to produce space, provide space for the others to fill out more. But I would also spend quite a bit of time on a lot of these vertical ones. The branches coming off the tertiary or the third branch structure coming off the main epicormic growth shoot that has come up, they're just too close. They're like 6 inches apart. So I would start thinning those out to be probably minimal 10 inches apart, but sometimes even as high as like 18 or 20 inches apart, just so that they have more space in between them. And I do nitpick when I prune, so just know that. I find clients, I interview my clients for the quality of work I want to do, and then I go and yeah, I spend time picking and pruning. I actually carry pruning shears on my saddle because of this. So I know a lot of guys don't do this. It's all about the money and it's whatever, but if you want to do it the best way for the tree, you've got to get out there on those tips and branches, and you've got to use pole saws, pruners, and different things. That's why I climb with a Fiskar Easy Reach stick. I think that thing is amazingly good for the price that it is. It's not flawless. It has its own issues, but for what I do, it's perfect. And then the fine tooth Zubat blade on a pole saw for this would be great to get all those little nubs, so that you're not just ripping them off because the teeth aren't as big. It'll actually cut them and make fairly clean cuts, and it'll overall help that upper canopy be thinner, be healthier, and produce the light that it needs for the inside while resisting strong winds and also producing the nutrients and carbohydrates the tree needs. I hope that helps you guys out. I don't know. Let me know if I misstated something. Sometimes I do, I don't mean to. Sometimes I know the right thing to say, but it just comes out wrong. Or am I missing something? Would you prune it a different way? Let us know in the comments. I'm always up to learn new techniques and things. This is what I've been studying and what I've learned, and this is also between book study videos from professors and also my own personal experience. But there's always multiple ways to do the same thing, and not all of them are right, but not all of them are wrong either. So I'm curious to know what you guys would do as well. Thanks for stopping by and checking out my videos. My name is Eric McGrew with Eric's Tree Service once again, and I hope to see you guys in the future in my other videos. Please don't forget to comment, like, share, and subscribe. Go by and check out Elevated Office. It's a podcast that I put out, and I think you guys will like it. I'm finding out that non-arborists are liking the podcast as well as a ton of actual arborists. So you might find something in there for you. And don't forget, check out Gap Arborist Supply if you're looking for things for climbers or just arborist work around your own home. They have a cool supply, an assortment of tools. They have reasonable prices, and Kyle and Ray definitely know what they're talking about. So give them a go as well. You can find all the descriptions to everything in my description below this video. Check me out on Facebook at Elevated Office Podcast page as well. And I hope to see you guys in the future. Take care. Bye.